Hey guys, how's it going? Dudey here. I'm back with another video. Today, I'm here to talk about the case of James Bulger. James Bulger was a 2-year-old toddler in Liverpool that was abducted by two 10-year-olds, tortured and murdered. On February 12th, John Venebles and Robert Thompson skipped school and decided to head down to the Strand shopping mall. Whilst there, they were stealing from shops and taking the things that they had stolen and throwing them down the escalators, apparently just for shits and giggles. Eventually, during that day, they decided that they were going to abduct someone, a child, and torture and kill them. The reasons behind that, still to this day, is unknown. The motivations are unknown. Now, James Bulger wasn't actually the first child that they attempted to abduct. A woman noticed that her two children had gone missing, a daughter and a son, 2 and 3 years of age. Obviously panicking because her children had gone missing, she began searching for them and quickly found the daughter outside the shop of which they went missing, but her son was still not to be found. She asked her daughter, "Where is her brother?" and she said that he had gone outside with 2 other boys. She of course began shouting for her son, ran outside, where she saw Thompson and Venebles trying to lure her son away. Quite disturbingly, when Venebles and Thompson realised that the mother was in pursuit, they just calmly told the child to return to the mother, and then they scattered. Not long after the failed abduction of the previous boy, they began mulling around the mall once again and trying to steal sweets from a sweets kiosk in order to try and lure more children away from their parents. It was here that they saw James Bulger stood in the doorway of a butcher's shop whilst the mother was paying for whatever she was purchasing from the butcher's at the time. In the time it took her to look down at her purse, pay the guy at the till, James was abducted. He was taken, and the boys lured him away in one of the most disturbing CCTV images of all time. Here you can see Venebles holding James Bulger's hand as he leads him away, with Thompson walking in front of them. Several shoppers recounted seeing the two with Bulger, but just assumed that they were his older brothers or something. The boys would take Bulger on a 4-kilometer walk. They would go past many people. They would assault the child on the way. Of course, he was crying out for his mother at the time. They would kick him, they would hit him. They even took him to a canal and dropped him on his head, which caused a big head wound on his forehead, in which Venebles and Thompson pulled the hood of his coat over to try and hide the wound. Now this is the part... Now this part of this case really does irritate me and make me angry. Obviously the killers are 2 barbaric pieces of shit. Something that really frustrated me researching this case was apparently there were 38 people that saw James Bulger cut, bruised, crying, walking with 2 10-year-olds, and they did nothing. They just, looked the other way. They didn't inquire. There were a couple of people that were like, "Oh, you probably want to take him to the police station," rather than actually taking the 2-year-old from these 2 like, I'm not a fucking hero or anything, yeah? But if I saw a 2-year-old crying, beaten, cut, bleeding with 2 10-year-olds, I would inform the police immediately. Now I know times were different then, didn't necessarily have a mobile phone, but some people were like, "Oh, kids, you need to walk him to the police station to find his mum." I would intervene. But I don't understand how you can see a 2-year-old that is crying, that is beaten, with 2 10-year-olds, regardless of whether they are in care of this child or not. 10-year-olds should never be in charge of 2-year-olds. So whether they're supposed to be with him or not is irrelevant. As a fucking adult, you have the responsibility to make sure that that child is safe. Bearing in mind, there were passers-by that watched Thompson and Venebles kick this 2-year-old in the ribs and walked on by. Saw this 2-year-old crying out for his mother and walked on by. It's just, it infuriates me that there were 38 people, 38 minimum, that came forward that could have stopped this from happening. Could have taken this child with the two 10-year-olds, if they are apparently his brothers or whatever, and taken him to a police station. Because I understand you don't have mobile phones and stuff, so it's not a case of, right, fucking wait there, I'm calling the police. Man, reading this case fucking pissed me off, to be honest. Just the fucking cowardice of these people. How can you let a 2-year-old, I'm not even a father, I don't know what it's like to have a child, and yet I cannot fucking comprehend watching a 2-year-old be assaulted and not do anything, or seeing a 2-year-old crying out for its mother, seeing a 2-year-old bleeding. Just as an adult, I would think that 2-year-old is with two 10-year-olds. I don't know what the scenario is here. I don't know how this has come about, but this is not right. And as an adult, it is my fucking responsibility to make sure that this scenario ends safely, you know? Obviously a tangent there, but fucking hell. I honestly hope, and I know this might sound bad, I hope that every individual that walked past that boy that day, I hope that it fucking haunted them for the rest of their lives, because they could have stopped this from happening. Oh, how would you know? There's no way of telling. A 2-year-old with two fucking 10-year-olds that is beaten and bleeding, that's how you fucking know. Soon after, a woman saw Thompson punch Bulger and shake him, but she pulled her curtains and blocked out the scene. Good for you, love. Even the ones that stopped. Even the ones that stopped. An elderly woman saw Bulger crying, right? Noticed his injuries, and so inquired and asked the two 10-year-olds, what's going on here? They just said, oh, we found him at the bottom of the hill. She was satisfied with that. Okay, sweet. You're an adult. Take over from the two fucking children. But no, she was satisfied with that. She just said, okay, make sure you take him to the police station. Unbelievable. Apparently later that night, when the old lady saw on the news that Bulger was missing, she rang the police with deep regrets for not acting as a fucking responsible adult. Another woman intervened and said, I will take Bulger to the police station, and she was like, you're two 10-year-olds, not happening. So she asked another woman to look after her daughter while she took Bulger to the police station. The woman refused because her dog doesn't like children. I don't understand the circumstances, obviously, but I don't get why you can't just take your own daughter with you when taking James to the police station. But here we are. So she just abandoned that venture, and so off went James with these two absolute monsters. Anyway, 38 people later, they arrive at the railway. This is where the horrendous torture, sexual assault and murder of James Bulger took place. Venebles and Thompson threw blue paint that they had stolen earlier into the left eye of Bulger. They beat him and threw rocks and bricks at him. They kicked him, punched him, stuffed batteries into his mouth. And then the boys hit Bulger over the head with a 22-pound iron bar, which caused 10 skull fractures. Altogether, Bulger suffered 42 separate injuries, and the beating and torture was so bad that it could never be concluded which blow was the killing blow. After Bulger was dead, Venebles and Thompson put his body on the railway, which later a train came along and severed James in half. For days, the police would search for James. The news would put out pictures of him, pictures of the CCTV, and sadly, his father believed that James would be okay because you could clearly see from the CCTV that James was with young children, and of course young children wouldn't do anything as evil as to harm or kill a toddler. Unfortunately, this was not the case. A few days later, 4 children playing at the railway discovered James's body. Ultimately, it was an anonymous phone call that tipped off police as to Venebles and Thompson being the killers. They actually had many different children in custody, and even after Thompson and Venebles were taken into custody, they weren't the prime suspects because they were only 10 years old, and so the police thought must be 13, 14. Again, because 10-year-olds killing a 2-year-old, what the actual fuck? But There was blue paint on Venebles' coat. There was James Bulger's blood on Thompson's shoes, and they were quickly found to be guilty, mainly because when interrogated, they turned on each other and sold each other out. Thompson was very cold and remorseless throughout the whole process, whereas Venebles broke down regularly and during the trial had crying outbursts. Even though the public wanted them dead by all accounts because of what they did to this poor little boy, the judge saw it better fit for them to be rehabilitated and psychologically analysed. This resulted in both of them being released 8 years later. They were given lifelong new identities to protect them from potential members of the public going after them, seeking vengeance. Thompson, since being released, has apparently lived a quiet life. No one knows for sure because obviously he has a new identity. However, Venebles has been in and out of prison ever since, and it has all been linked to child pornography. The guy who sexually assaulted James Bulger in the process of killing him is also a paedophile. He did a stint in prison in 2010 and 2017 for a 4-year period. Now, it is not known because of the anonymity around him as to whether he is still in prison to this day or if he has been released once again on good behaviour. But it is safe to say that this man has never rehabilitated and should still be in prison for what he did to James Bulger, as should Thompson. So there we go, guys. That is the case of James Bulger. Absolutely disgusting. Thompson and Venebles are just deplorable, evil human beings that should not walk free. Unfortunately, one of them is, the other one probably will be if he isn't already. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about all the people that you know missed the opportunity to save James's life? I know you can say, oh, hindsight is 20/20, etc., but I just think any fucking half decent human being seeing that circumstance just would have acted, you know. But yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know. If you want to support me as a creator, all the links are down below. Like, share and subscribe. I'll see you very soon. Sweet one, geese.